still be there, or he may not be there at all. I guess time will tell. I might stop by there tomorrow and do a little more investigating. As we speak, it's 11 PM again, and I'm staring at my hotel window, just scrolling through Reddit. I'm still dreading the moment that I see the car with the flashing high beams pulling into the parking lot, so I'll probably just be looking out my window all night again. I'll post more updates if necessary, and I appreciate you guys, but bye for now. So, I've been reading through all your comments, guys, and just so you guys know, I can't get a hold of a gun as easily as most of you think. I live in a state where that shit just doesn't fly, and the best that I have right now is pepper spray and a baseball bat. 1:37 AM. Call me a lunatic, but I left my room to get some fresh air, and I just couldn't stand being in this small-ass hotel room one more second. I was bugging out like crazy, though, and every person I saw seemed like a threat to me, and I started talking with this one guy in the hotel lobby. Says he's been traveling from state to state on some sort of a self-indulged journey across the country or something. I asked him if he has any experiences with stalkers, and he told me that he'd been receiving anonymous calls a couple of years back from some guy. I asked if he had ever encountered one in his backyard or anything, and he just kind of looked at me funny. I explained to him the situation, and he wished me the best of luck, and it was nothing out of the ordinary, but it was nice to have some real human interaction while I'm losing my fucking mind. 1:46 AM. Alright, one of the janitors must be fucking with me, because I spent the last minute searching for my phone and asked someone outside my room to call it for me, and I listened for the ringing, and it's in the fucking safe. And the password is not the one that they gave me. What the fuck? This is fucking weird, man, but whoever's doing this is going to get torn a new one, I'll tell you that much. I'm going to the manager right now, and I've got to get this sorted. 2:08 AM. So, I'm demanding a different room, guys. I'm not staying in that same fucking room one more second. The whole staff is in there now trying to figure out the safe password. Meanwhile, the manager is looking for the janitors who have been in my room to ask what the fuck they were thinking. Fuck this, though. I'm tired and I'm worried, and now I just lost my fucking phone. Fuck. 2:24 AM. No, guys, it's not the garage code, guys. I checked that. Even if it was, I mean, why would it be? And how would the fucking stalker even get into my hotel room, let alone rewire my safe? But guys, I'm not leaving the hotel, okay? I already paid the money to stay here, and I don't have any other place to go that's not 100 miles away. I have no car, and I got here in an Uber car, and at least here there's over 100 people staying here, so that's good. I mean, the stalker's not going to come into a hotel full of people, right? 2:40 AM. I'm sitting in my hotel room all alone with no phone, nowhere to call an Uber, nowhere to call the police, and I'm starting to think that one of the janitors got bribed to do this or something. I now not only have no way of driving away from here, but I have no way of contacting any family or anyone for that matter of getting me away from the hotel. I'm gonna wait for another 45 minutes, and if they don't open the safe, I'm demanding that they call an Uber for me, and I'm just driving the hell out of here. 2:53 AM. Someone just knocked on the door saying the safe is open, and I told them alright, and then they asked me to come and get it. I asked him if he could slip it under the door, but he said that I need to go and get it myself. I told him that I would in a couple of minutes and that he'd be waiting, but I'm starting to get a little bit paranoid here, guys. 3:10 AM. So, the man said that my phone is in the main lobby if I want it, and I'm on my laptop next to my window, and I could have sworn out of the corner of my eye that I saw a car flashing its high beams again. I don't know if I should hold out till morning or get my phone and just leave. What do you guys think? 3:14 AM. Guys, I'm not waiting until 3:24 for this guy to fucking come into my room and jump me. I'm packing and I'm just gonna get the fuck out of here. I'll keep you guys posted on mobile when I get my phone back. 3:16 p.m. Alright guys, I'm staying at a friend's place for right now. Just to clarify, when I said not a trace of DNA was found too, I meant that there was nothing that was found to trace this guy back. Like a glove or fingerprints on the garage keypad or anything. The police did not do a full investigation, obviously. The guy still hasn't been found too, and my neighbors have told me that no one's been back to my house and my parents are currently staying at my aunt's down south. I got my phone back too, and there was a missed call from some guy named Nick Sullivan. What's strange is his name was never put into my contacts though. I've never met anybody named Nick Sullivan in my life, and I don't know how it's in there. I tried calling back and it just went to voicemail. Creepy shit nonetheless, but maybe I'm just being a bit paranoid. I don't know. I'll see if I can make another update tonight, but I gotta go for now. I'll talk to you soon. 4:35 p.m. So, the guy who called my phone wasn't the same guy as Nick Sullivan that I'd missed a call from. I don't know what the hell is going on, but this is weird, man. Hey again, guys. So, as I got in the Uber, the driver had been waiting for me to come out, and I got in his car. I nearly shit myself as he turned on his car to find that the car, the one directly across from it, in the parking lot, was a grey Volkswagen. I couldn't tell if this was the same one from the night before because, well, A, this one had a license plate, and B, I never had gotten a good look at it up close before, so it could just be another person's car. As we were leaving, though, I looked up to the hotel, and in one of the rooms there was clearly a figure looking out the window. I'm not jumping to any conclusions right now as to whether it was him. I'm not sure if it was even the same room as mine. I just keep questioning myself at this point as to whether all of this shit is real or just paranoia. But maybe the guy actually did find me and I was about to be slaughtered, maimed, or worse. Or maybe this just is a classic case of schizophrenia or something, and I'm just finding ways to freak myself out. One thing that is for sure, though, is that the guy is definitely still hunting me. I got a text from Mr. Sullivan, or Nick, or whatever the fuck he wants to call himself, and I'm still petrified after seeing it. At exactly 8:34 p.m. today, he sent me a video, and the only other thing that he said in the text was, "I see you." And the video, I'm positively sure, is my house. And now I want to know when the video was taken. It probably was not taken last night, as police were all watching my house. So that means that he either took it the first 2 nights, or as recent as today, and I'm really hoping that it's the latter. If he took it today, that means that he probably still thinks that I'm staying there. Unfortunately, though, this guy seems far from stupid, and if he has stalked me enough to know my garage code, he most certainly must have noticed that I'm no longer coming back there. Either way, he's trying to terrorize me, and he's probably trying to get me to flee my house for his perfect moment to strike. In some twisted way, I expected worse, I guess. I don't know what makes this psychopath tick. Maybe dead animals, maybe dead people, or just seeing his victims crumble under all the stress that he's inflicted on them. But what I am dreading, though, is if he actually manages to find me at my friend's place. This guy, Tom, took up the mantle of protecting me, and if this guy manages to find me, I'll never forgive myself for putting this on him. I offered him money, but he refused. So, for the past 2 hours, we've just been doing nothing but drinking beer and playing video games to calm my nerves. Tom is a bit of a hick, I would say. He loves dipping, sitting on his front porch drinking beer, and he has a pretty large collection of guns. Probably the best friend to have in a situation like this, if I'm being honest. Just as you guys have been nagging me to get a hold of, too.
So, all in all right now, I'm feeling the most secure I've felt out of all the days since this shit started. I have informed the police about my situation too in the video, and they told me that they hadn't seen a car parked near my house at all in the past day. I gave them the number and they told me that they'll do their best to try and triangulate its position. So, it's getting late now too, and my friend and I have decided that we need to start securing the place in case of intruders. His house has security alarms, and he lives on a relatively busy street, so no one can just park near the house without parking in the driveway, and he's been staying off of official media as I've asked him to for my own safety. The anxiety hasn't stopped, mind you, but this is the first time I've had a friend by my side to help me with this situation, so I must admit that I feel better. He gave me one of his pistols too, and we started shooting in the range in his backyard despite having never shot a gun before. We're currently on his porch, just talking as I share this. I'm really grateful for all of your support, and updates will come, as always, for everybody. I hope you guys have a good night, and hopefully nothing notable will happen for once. And now, I guess we wait.
Hey guys, so at approximately 3 in the morning last night, my friend woke me up telling me that I needed to check something out. I immediately grabbed the revolver I'd left on the table next to the couch and we went to the front porch. In the distance, we could see a car parked all the way down the road. I'd say it was about 300 yards and still visible because of a streetlight. The following was the conversation that I can best remember from me talking to Tom. Yeah, you see that car down there? I was dozing off, and the moment I snapped out of it, the thing just showed up out of nowhere, and it was just sitting there. How long do you think it's been there for? I'm not sure. I saw it there and stared at it for a good 2 minutes. After that, I took my flashlight and started flashing it on and off. After the car shot off, and some guy got out and waved and walked into the woods. There's a wooded area near my buddy's house that if you walk through it, you can go walk into a large open field in his backyard. There's a fence dividing the field from the backyard, but it can be easily hopped. Well, do you think we should go and check it out? Nah, this guy could be going into the woods and coming back around towards my back door. You have to stay here and I'll go check it out, okay? Alright, but if it's a grey Volkswagen, we need to leave, okay? I want you to record the license plate too, and look inside for anything notable. Look for things like ropes and knives and duct tape, anything sketchy that we need to get out of here, okay? Yeah, okay, well, just wait inside and defend the house or something, alright? Make sure no one gets inside, okay? I went back into the house and stared out the window as Tom approached the vehicle with his 12 gauge. I went to the back of his house and stared out his backyard window, and I saw some figure start walking across the field. This was particularly strange, as there were no houses visible in this field, and he just seemed like he was walking towards nowhere. He climbed over a hill, and he was no longer in view from the window. I went back to the front window to look at the car, and Tom was checking it out. I felt relieved for the slightest moment, as I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. And then, his home phone rang. I looked at it and saw the caller ID, and it was my area code, not Tom's. At this point, I had my phone still on airplane mode, so I assumed it was someone from my neighborhood or family trying to contact me. I felt almost intrusive seeing that I was answering a call to a home that was not even mine, but now was not a time to take chances, so I answered. Hello? Excuse me, who's this? Oh, excuse me, sir. My apologies. Is this the owner of the household? No, I'm just a friend of the owner. He's currently outside. Who's this? At this point, I just felt that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when you realized that you fucked up. I just revealed that I'm here alone, and whoever is calling just realized that too. Hello? Who else are you with, sir? Is it just you? At this point, I was shaking and I could barely speak without stumbling my words. I decided the best thing to do was lie like no tomorrow. No, we're having a party and there's a couple of other people here. Who's calling? Are you sure about that? I was just walking by and saw that there were only 2 cars in his driveway. At this point, I completely lose my shit. Listen, man, just fucking tell me who you are and why the fuck you're calling this house so late. Hello? Can you please just fucking tell me? I apologize, sir. I may have the wrong number. Tell whoever owns this house to call back. Thank you. And then he hung up. Tom had come back and said that the car was not a Volkswagen and had a license plate. He said that the windows were tinted and the doors were locked, so there was really nothing that he could make out. I told him about the caller and he said that he had no idea whose number that was. He called back and no one answered. He also called from a restricted number, but there was no answer there either. An hour passed by as we were sitting on the porch and we heard an audible slam from his back door. We both looked at each other and he motioned to follow him around back. We saw nothing out of the ordinary and we looked around everywhere for footprints, but still nothing. But when we had gone back to the front porch after countless minutes of searching, it was approximately 4 in the morning at that point. It wasn't until 10 minutes after we got back to the porch that we noticed the car 300 yards away was gone and we hadn't even noticed. I haven't gotten any sleep since last night and I told him that I wanted to leave his house because I need to keep moving, and he said that he wants to come too. He locked up all his doors, brought some guns, and we drove off at 6 in the morning. The police still haven't done jack shit, mind you, despite all the valuable intelligence I gave them too. And I've been on the road all day with my friend now. I drove a lot and he slept in back, and we're currently at a McDonald's as I type this. We were joking, saying that if we do end up getting kidnapped and murdered and attacked, at least someone will know from these videos, right? I'm just tired, guys. Tired of all of this shit and of being stalked. Tired of being hunted down and tired of making these fucking posts. I want this to be over. If anything happens tonight, I'll let you know, but bye for now. I'm sorry to inform you guys, but I think it's about time that we wrap up the show. My parents have returned home, and both the police and my neighbors haven't seen the man ever since I left. I've been on the road for the past few days, and I want to stop running. My parents informed me too that they got a hold of a revolver now, and all I want to do is just go home, sleep in my own bed, and be done with this madness. I'm starting to think that all of this here has just been in my head. I mean, the guy hasn't made any notable appearances in my life since that night, and maybe that video that he sent was just from the first 2 nights that I saw him. I don't know. I guess that's been the real problem ever since the start of this, is that I've just been overreacting to this whole phenomenon, maybe. Maybe this guy is just some deranged burglar. Maybe he came to my house thinking that I was just somebody else. I don't know for sure. But Tom and I have been on and off the road, only stopping to get food or to piss, and a lot of comments have been telling me to either stop using Reddit or to stake it out and confront the man myself. I've come to realize that I've been making a poor choice documenting everything that's happened on Reddit. God only knows if this man has been using it to his advantage. But more importantly, I've been hiding and running away from him all this time. And I thought it was finally time that I confront him myself. Now, I'm not going to make an effort to contact him or find him, but if he decides that he wants to come and attack my house and my family and myself, then he'll finally meet his maker, that's for sure. However, I thought a good start would be to just pay the 7-Eleven guy a visit today, and we decided to confront him. I just needed to be sure that it wasn't him, so we parked in the front of the 7-Eleven at about 8 at night, about 3 hours ago. This is the conversation that we had, to the best of my memory. Hey, is this the guy? Yeah, that's him. Let's just go in and ask him a few questions, okay? We just need to scare him a little and see how he responds. Tom took his pistol from the back seat and put it in his holster. Dude, is that necessary? Look, man, we aren't even sure if this is the guy. I mean, we can't just pull a gun on him and make him shit himself. I'm just taking some precaution is all, and if this is the guy, then we gotta be careful, right? And with that, Tom got out of his car and started walking in as I followed. As soon as we walked in, he asked, "Hey boys, how you doing today?" We both gave him a stern look, so he responded, "Hey guys, what's the sour mood for?" I looked at Tom and he looked back at the cashier and asked, "Lovely day, isn't it?" I could see that the guy was getting visibly nervous and began to sweat a little. "Hey man, I couldn't but notice that gun in your holster. A pretty nice gun, that's a Colt, right? My dad had one of those." We didn't break eye contact. "Yeah, I would say it's a pretty nice day, isn't it? How's your day going? Well?" I went directly in front of the counter and got face to face with him. "Hey, can I ask you something?" I could see the cashier swallowing and he coughed. Yeah, sure. What is it? Do you drive here to work by any chance?" "Oh, negatory. My friend drops me off." I looked at Tom and he looked back at the guy. "You best not be lying to us, man." The cashier broke. "Look guys, I don't want any trouble. If you're here to rob the place, that doesn't concern me, okay? I'm just a guy who works here, alright? Just take the money and go if that's what you want. We aren't here to rob anything, okay? We're just asking a couple of questions, if that's alright with you." Cashier folded his arms and said, "Sure, ask whatever you need. What's up? When does your shift end?" "Oh, usually around 3 in the morning, I'd say." "What's all this about, boys? Are you guys undercover cops or something? Have you seen a grey Volkswagen in the past couple of nights that you've been working here?" Yeah, actually, I did. The night before you came in here was a guy who came in after you, the other night, I think." "Did he buy anything?" Yeah, he bought some cigarettes, I think, and dipping tobacco. He didn't say much, but he said he had a long night ahead of him." "I take it he gave you ID?" Yeah, he did, actually." "What was his name? Do you remember?" I think it was like Nathan Silverstein or something like that." "You mean Nick Sullivan?" Shit, yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure that that's his name. What's it to you, by the way? Can we see your ID for a second?" He showed us his ID, and this guy seemed to be completely innocent. "Alright, man. Thanks for your time. The police might come later to ask for your camera feed from that night, but I appreciate your help." We left, and that was the end of it. Finally, after all these days of running, we finally got a decent lead on this guy. We called the police, and they're currently going over the tapes, and this was an amazing feeling now that we finally had a good lead on this guy. And I can finally go home. Tom has been such a good friend the past couple of days. He's stuck with me through thick and thin, and even through rough times. And I'm just eternally grateful for what he's done for me in this time of need. After a long day of travelling, he told me that his girlfriend has been awfully worried about him too, and this made me feel even worse about the situation. Finally, I told him that we needed to part ways and that I wanted him to go home and rest, and that I apologized for putting him in danger. He told me not to sweat it, and that it was actually a pretty exciting experience for him despite it maybe putting our lives in jeopardy. I gave him some money to help him out with his troubles, and he's going to his girlfriend's house, and he said that he'll be staying there for a while until this gets completely sorted out.
No more running, and no more fear, and no more stalking. I'm finally done with this, guys, and I seriously can't wait to go home and see my family and just be safe and sound in my home again. I want to thank you guys for all your support through these past few days. It's really meant a lot. At some point, I got texts from my parents too saying that it was safe to come home. But when I called them, everything sounded normal. However, my mum sounded somewhat worried and flustered about the whole situation when my dad put her on the phone. I asked her what was wrong, and she simply told me I'm under a lot of stress and followed it by, "Just come home please, we miss you." I feel sorry for them if I'm being honest. I don't know why, but I somewhat blame myself for all this shit happening. If they haven't seen the stalker at all, then this must have to do with me and me alone. I must have done something to cause this man to torment my family. As we speak, Tom has left back home and I'm finishing this last update at Starbucks. I'll call an Uber and I'll finally be home. If the guy gets caught, I'll link you guys to a news article or something, but this will be the final update. Thank you all in advance for your advice and enthusiasm and, peace, I guess. 12:12 a.m. So, I just came home and there aren't any cars in the driveway. I'm a little worried and, I'm gonna call my parents. Alright, no answer from my parents. I guess I'll try the garage code now. Well, my parents must have changed the garage code or something. I'm banging on the door and no one's fucking answering though. And man, it's really cold tonight. 12:21 a.m. Alright, well, there's some lights turning on in my bedroom, so they're obviously home. This happened a few weeks ago, and I'm still a bit shaken by it. So my husband and I, we like to take long drives in the desert with our dog. We live just outside of Las Vegas and are fortunate to live in a city with abundant and beautiful areas to stargaze or use a telescope. My husband just got one for his birthday in October, so he was excited to try it out and all that. We drove our Kia up to a popular overlook and he took out the telescope. He showed me a bunch of constellations, and we even saw a shooting star. But the doggo sat in the car too, with the two windows rolled down at this time, and my dog is a bitch, straight up. They weren't kidding when they named female dogs that too. She's an American cattle dog, and she saved my ass before from a home invasion. She's protective of both me and her dad. Anyway, hubby had to pee, and he told me to wait in the car for him. So I got in and locked the door, and meanwhile I'm browsing Reddit when I hear gravel moving, and thinking it's my hubby, I remark, that was fast, and suddenly my dog goes berserk. She's snarling, barking, and so I turn around and there's a dude that's not my husband. The idiot made a huge mistake though. He put his hand through an open window with a crazy 63-pound dog. She's got his hand, and so he's just screaming. I'm screaming, and my husband is yelling as he runs towards us with his pants half on. The dog lets his arm go, and the guy takes off, and I call the cops. My husband tries chasing after the guy, but he's 6'3" and 280 pounds, and this guy was fast. Anyway, the cops do show up eventually and tell us that they'll look out for him, but to maybe stay away from that area that night. The cops in our town are just an absolute joke. Anyway, the doggo got a cup of Dairy Queen that night, and we're very grateful for her. When I was 13, I started modeling. I did fairly well, but honestly, I hated the business. They were just really strict about my weight. I mean, I couldn't get over 100 pounds or I'd lose my contracts. I couldn't dye my hair or have any piercings without permission, and they would often check on me to make sure that I haven't gone against their wishes. But fast forward 2 years though to me being 15. One day I got an email from a fitness photographer. This wasn't uncommon for me to get random emails because my agency would give my email out once they booked me something. This is also about 12 years ago, and back then I naively didn't worry too much about anything really. You know, the common teenage mentality of nothing's ever going to get me. In the email, the photographer told me that he'd like to do a shoot, and the compensation that he promised me, I would have made more money than I have of any other shoots. So, obviously, being money-driven, I emailed him back and told him yes, I'd be interested, and he sent me one back after that saying that he needed some sample photos of my calves and my feet and my backside and my breasts to make sure that I had the physique he wanted. I was a little cautious, I must admit, but I thought, you know, he's offering me a lot of money and I should probably do what he's asking or he's going to find somebody else. And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to feel pressured to send him the pictures, and I did feel the pressure. Of course, I had it in the back of my mind that I shouldn't do it, but the money was real good. So I sent the pictures clothed, and he said that he couldn't tell my proper sizing and I need to send him nude photos. Obviously, I declined this and told him that I'd be willing to set up a meeting and his assistant can take measurements, but I would not send nude photos over the internet. He set up a meeting but cancelled last minute, and a few weeks later he was on the news. He apparently got busted for child pornography, and shocker, he was not a fitness photographer. Who knows what could have happened to me had I actually gone to meet him, though. I never found out how he even got my email, in fact, because my agency said that they never spoke with the guy. This happened about 4 years ago, around New Year's at my house. So, I live in a pretty wooded area of Maryland. I actually have a nice trail in my backyard that leads to a stream too. I go down there a lot with friends and my dog, and even just by myself sometimes. I've never encountered another person along this stream any time that I've been there. But because of this, I've always felt pretty at ease there, but it's still a bit cautious knowing that my whole neighborhood could just as easily walk down their backyards and get to the stream too, or people from the neighborhood against ours. On this day, we had some cousins over, I believe, to watch a Ravens game and just to get together for the holidays and whatnot. It was unusually warm for late December, probably around 50s or 60s, and we all moved outside to supervise my little cousins throwing a football around. My mum suggested that I take my younger cousins down the trail to the stream to burn off some energy. Honestly, I didn't want to because I was bloated from food, but I did anyway. So I herded 4 pubescent boys down the trail to the stream, and they kind of ran off ahead of me to climb on things and just do whatever. I just hung behind, just watching over them, and made sure nobody did anything especially stupid while playing on my phone. As I was playing on my phone, I got this kind of weird feeling while I was down there, and I just didn't feel at ease, almost like a premonition or something. I turned around to look behind me and scan the woods, and the first scan, everything was fine. But then, I saw it. There was a dark figure in the distance that looked male, but I'm not entirely sure because of the distance, who was half behind a tree, almost as if he was hiding and peeking out at me. When I spotted him, rather than go back behind the tree, he stepped out and just stood beside the tree while I stared back. I had just a really bad feeling about this, and I got really big chills and immediately yelled for the boys to come back. They didn't listen to me at first, but I told them to get their asses back now, and I didn't say why. Just start hauling ass up the trail, and we made it back safely to my house, where I told everyone about the encounter. I'm not sure if nothing bad would have happened if we had stayed down there, but I really didn't want to stick around to find out.
This happened when I was in my early teens in the late 80s. My family lived in a very secluded area, a forested area in fact. We had a long driveway and our small home sat on a square acre of mowed grass with woods on both sides. I was alone one night just talking with a buddy from school, and I often rode my bike to town over the summer, and he invited me to come over and spend the night. It was a 20-mile trip over completely empty country roads, but it was always an adventure, and I seldom hesitated to go when I had a place to stay. And so I told him it was a sure thing. I'd call my mother at work and then start my ride. But here's where it got creepy. Once I hung up the phone and started getting dressed, more black, I picked up the phone again to call my mum, but the line was dead. This had never happened before, and it was a sturdy rotary phone, and we never had problems with it. But for some reason, my thoughts just instantly went to the small phone box in the back of the house. It was a tiny round junction with nothing but a rubber covering. Behind the cover was the exposed connection between the phone pole and our inside line. The wires were twisted together and kept out completely vulnerable. I remember questioning why I would even think about that. Why would I jump to conclusions about the cause of the dead line? But for some reason I was just overwhelmed with a feeling of dread that just didn't make sense, and I was wrestling with my thoughts. I decided to behave as though I was in real danger, but calmed myself by focusing on how unlikely it was and how my imagination was probably just getting the best of me. But I just could not shake the feeling that I was in trouble for some reason. So I finished dressing and strapped a buck knife to my hip, with the old Rambo knives with a compass in the stock, and it was cheap but really big, and I moved quietly and planned how I would leave the house. I remember this really well, actually. I would slide out the front door and pull it closed behind me, locked, and I would not be able to get back in. I would grab my bike from against the wall on the enclosed porch and spin around and use my elbow to press the button of the handle on the screen door and jump down the concrete steps. I'd hop on my bike and speed down the drive. And so, with the plan in mind, I got to it. It was really dark outside, but there were bright lights in the front and the rear of the house that created big pools in the yard. And that's all the light that I had. I executed my maneuver just as I planned, but unfortunately, my elbow slipped off the button on the handle and banged into the door as it opened, and within seconds, I was pumping down the gravel drive. I turned my head to the left, filling my ears with the roar of the air I was cutting through, and stopped pedaling, my eyes fixed on the rear of the house. Again, I'm not really sure why, but I was 100% sure that someone was coming. I don't know how or why I was thinking this. It was only a moment, but I didn't look away despite my own skepticism. And at the last instant, I saw him. A man wearing dark clothes and a ski mask came tearing out of the lit yard around the back of the house and plunged into the deep shadow along the side, heading for the front, where I had been only seconds ago. I was invisible, wearing black from head to toe, and instead of running straight for me, he went for the porch where the commotion I just made had come from. I turned forward and leaned into the pedals. I could barely see the driveway, but I had ridden my bike down it many times at night, and I could make out the large stone gate post before the dirt road. I almost wrecked turning the corner, but recovered and sped it away. About a mile further, I finally stopped at the intersection to a paved road. My heart was pounding in my chest and my forehead was sweaty. I stood there for a bit and got my breathing under control while I tried to digest what had just happened. My thoughts were racing because I knew damn well what I just saw, but I was finally out of danger. And all I could do was press on. My neighbors were Amish, so they had no phone, and I wouldn't have known what to say anyway. But when I got to my friend's house much later, I told him what happened and called my mother. She listened and didn't give me a hard time, but I could tell that she didn't know what to think. She wouldn't be home till morning anyway, and she said that she'd be careful. And that was it. I had heard a laughter once from the edge of the woods and things in the yard that had been moved on occasion, but no one else had these experiences, and I assumed it was just backwards Amish kids fooling around or something. Nothing had ever really happened before, but I doubt Amish kids would know how to disconnect a phone line, though. Whatever happened, and whatever all these strange occurrences came from, I think that there was something more sinister going on. So this all began when I was 19 and continued for several years after that. I'm male, which I suppose matters to the story. When I was in high school and my first year of college, I worked at a local grocery store part-time. I did everything from bagging groceries, stocking shelves, cashiering, working for the service desk, all that stuff. But toward the end of my time there, I was doing more of the stuff in front of the store, mainly at the service desk since I had been there forever, more cashiering. It was a small little grocery store too, so we'd have regulars. Many of the same customers would come in a lot, in fact, and we'd talk with them and get to know them. I was also very young and naive at the time, and thus overly trusting. And that would prove to be to my detriment. But there was this one guy who would come in about once a week, sometimes twice, and I'd been his cashier a few times. Eventually, he started standing in my line even if other lines were shorter, which wasn't too unusual, I guess. I hated working in retail, but I was damn good with the customers and was well liked. The only odd thing, though, was that generally the people who would do this were older, 60s or 70s at least, I'd say, and were usually ladies. Whereas this was a guy who had to be at most in his 40s. But whatever, I didn't think much of it at the time. His name was Jeff, but I didn't know his name for a long time because he always paid with cash. But when I finally learned what it was in one of those worst ways that you can think of. We'll get to that, though. At first, though, Jeff seemed pretty much harmless. He would chat me up, and if I didn't have a line, we'd sometimes talk a bit. He seemed interested in me and my life, but again, this wasn't so unusual, apart from his age mostly, so I just went with it. Jeff would ask me things about myself, like innocent questions. So I thought at the time anyway. He'd ask me what college I went to, and I told him because I had no reason not to. At one point, he brought up cars too, and he asked which one was mine. The parking lot was clearly visible through the large windows at the front of the store, and I stupidly pointed up at my car and said, "It's that one." We lived in a small area, and a lot of times by talking with customers, we'd realize that we lived near each other or something like that. So I didn't think much of it when he asked me where I lived. I told him the name of the town, which was adjacent to the city the store was in, and then when he asked where in that town I lived, I told him my street and then described my house. Like a total idiot, mind you. I like to think that I'm a smart guy in most situations, but that was not the case in this one. I didn't realize it at the time, but Jeff was systematically gathering information about me. But by the time I realized what was happening, it was way too late. I had told him everything short of giving him my cell phone number or actual address. So one day I was working in the service desk when Jeff came in and he wanted me to ring his groceries up. However, I was busy selling lottery or money order to a customer or something, I can't remember, so I told him that I couldn't. And he got this look on his face like he didn't like the fact that I told him no, but it was just for a second and then he was smiley again. I didn't really talk to him much because, I was with another customer and Jeff just stood there staring at me. I didn't really notice at first because whatever machine I was using, lottery or money order again, I can't remember, it was giving me hell. Eventually, even the customer was like, "Hey, that guy keeps staring at you," and that's when I looked over at him. He wasn't smiling, but looked kind of angry instead. But At the moment I looked at him, the smile was back on his face. Then Jeff said something about me wearing a skirt. Now, this wasn't the kind of humour he had exhibited before, and it was totally out of nowhere, mind you, and it just kind of gave me pause. I just kind of looked back at him as he went on about how I'd look in a skirt or dress, just staring at him with a total what the fuck expression on my face. And the more he talked about it, the more unnerved I became. Another co-worker, Miranda, was in the service centre with me, and she and the customer, as well as another nearby cashier, were all giving him what I presume were the same identical what the hell is happening expressions. He wasn't stopping though, so I realised that I had to say something to just make him stop, and I couldn't even pretend to be humoured by it when I told him, "I don't know what you're talking about. You'll never see me in anything but this uniform." My tone was serious, and he knew that I wasn't amused. The smile was gone, and I saw something on his face that I had never seen before. It was anger, yes, but it was also humiliation, and he did not like it one bit. He glared at me with a look that, honestly, I felt to my bones, but rushed through me like a cold chill. My breath caught in my throat as we just stared at each other, and I didn't even know how to explain it other than to say that this was the most menacing way anyone has ever looked at me. But with that look, he was saying, "You'll be sorry, I'm sure of it." Maybe I wasn't sure at the time, but in hindsight and all that. And without another word, he just turned and walked away. After that, whenever Jeff would come into the store, he never stood in my line again, which was fine with me, to be honest. However, he would always loudly talk about me from other registers and glare at me. He would badmouth me, but not in such an overt way where we could really do much about it. Sometimes he wouldn't even refer to me by name, but we all knew who he was talking about. Sometimes at night, I would be the only cashier at the front as we approached closing time. Another would be in the office just counting the drawers for the day, while the manager and the other workers were usually in the back or throughout the store stocking shelves or cleaning. And in the evenings, when I was more or less alone, I would notice this same car pull into the parking lot, but the driver never came in. But the main defining feature of this car was the fact that one of the headlights was burnt out. Because of the previously mentioned large windows, anyone in the parking lot could look into the store right at me too. It took me longer than I'm proud of to realise what was happening here, and the only way I realised who was in the car was by chance. My car was in the shop, so my mum picked me up from work when I was done one day, and as I was waiting for her to get there outside in front of the building, I was able to see into the car away from the bright lights of the store. And sure enough, it was Jeff. My shock was palpable, and that was when I truly realised that something was just very, very wrong about all this. I actually backed away in fear at this point and kept imagining what I would do if he got out of the car. The door inside had locked behind me, and while there were people in the store still, they weren't in the front. But luckily, that was when my mum got there. I didn't tell her because my story would only worry her, so I just kind of let it go for the time being. But everyone at the store knew about Jeff before long, and it got so bad that when he would come inside, everyone would instantly tell me to go into the back, and they would page me overhead when he left. I mean, everyone, even the managers. We all knew, and we were all pretty creeped out. A lot of the times that he would come in, and when he didn't see me, he would just immediately leave again too, or so I was told. I remember once we didn't notice him walking in though, and by the time that we realised, he was almost to the doors. Another cashier, Laura, saw him and looked scared. Now, Laura wasn't the easily rattled type, but this guy had all of us on edge, mostly because they were afraid of his weird fascination with me. She urged me frantically to hurry and get in the back, and I hadn't noticed him just yet and was confused, and I started to ask her why, but before I could finish, she said, "Just go." I clearly remember this moment too, these few seconds between the time that she said that and the time that I saw him walking through the door when I realized what was happening. Jeff saw me before I rushed into the back, and I was so unnerved that I locked the back door of the loading dock, worried that he'd come looking for me back there. When he was gone, Laura called me back up, and she just couldn't even say anything. She told me that he gave her a furious look and then stormed out of the store, and I remember being worried that he would retaliate against her. Luckily, he never did, though. Things would get worse, though. I began seeing Jeff around town, like when I would go to the movies, to various stores, gas stations, the mall, and even the bank once. Just a couple of these times might be a coincidence, I admit, but this was happening a lot. Plus, it was Jeff, so I knew it was much more than that. But I had no proof that he was stalking me at this point, and still didn't tell my parents. At the time, I was in college, and I lived at home and commuted to school, and I would often be there until after dark. By this point it was winter too and got dark early. There were times when I would pull out of the school parking lot, and very shortly after that, I'd see a car behind me with just one headlight. Once or twice, again, could just be a weird coincidence, but this was happening probably once a week at this point. And I still didn't tell my parents, even though I was pretty sure it was him. Then one night, when I was walking out of school into the naturally dark and deserted parking lot, I saw a car parked in an empty part of it with the headlights off. I didn't think anything of it until the lights came on and there was only one headlight again. I knew immediately that it was him, and I sprinted to my car, threw my shit into it, and got the hell out of there. After that, too, I started walking out with either security guards or friends when I could, and a couple of times I thought I saw his car, but he never put his lights on unless I was alone. He would never approach me or drive toward me or anything during these times, too. It was like he was taunting me or something. It was like he just wanted me to know that he was there, that he knew how to find me or something. This continued even after I quit working at the store. I became a tutor at school instead, but his stalking, because that's what it was, and I knew that for sure now, didn't cease. On one occasion, I was at a friend's house after dark, and then I drove home, but I was almost there when I realized that I had forgotten something. Instead of pulling around and into the driveway, I was going to just loop around the street because it was easier, so I drove past my house. This particular night, I was home alone. Both my siblings lived elsewhere, and my parents were out, so the house was dark. There shouldn't have been anyone in the driveway because I'd just spoken to my parents and they were nowhere near my home. But when I drove by, I saw the dark shape of a car and taillights. Sometimes, people turn around in our driveway because it was so big, so I thought that maybe that was it, or maybe someone had car trouble or something. But then, the car pulled out of the driveway after me, and I looked in my rearview mirror and saw it. The car had only one headlight, which means that this fucker was at my house and had been waiting for me. He followed me for a while too, and I couldn't go home, and I also didn't want to lead him to my friends' houses, so I drove back to the store I used to work at, rushed inside, and looked out the windows to see if he followed me. Miranda was working the night and asked me what was going on, and I just couldn't even speak. All I could do was look at her, and she knew. Her eyes got wide, and she couldn't speak either. After that night, Jeff began following me more too. He'd be at my school more often, and it was like he just knew my schedule. He knew where I'd be and when I'd be there, and I saw him all the time, and I shudder thinking about the times that I didn't see him, but when he had been there for who knows how long. And it wasn't just my schedule he'd learned, but he knew my parents to an extent too, at least when I would be home alone and all that. A few times, I'd hear a car pull into the driveway at night, and I just knew that it was him, even before I looked. But he never got out of his car, that I could see at least, and he would only stay for 10 minutes or so. Mainly this would be on a Wednesday or Sunday night too, when my parents would be at church, and I began avoiding the house at these times, either staying at school to study or hanging out with friends or going to the movies or something. At the time, I would occasionally babysit for someone at my parents' church too, but during this time I eventually stopped, afraid that he would follow me there. It was at this point too that I decided that I needed to look into this guy. Now, at the time, I didn't even know this guy's name, but something told me to take a look at the sex offenders database. So one day, while at my friend Jill's house, I did that. We looked at various pictures of nearby sex offenders and discovered the most shocking amount of them in the vicinity. And eventually, one of the small thumbnail pictures caught my eye. It was hard to tell if it was him, so I clicked on it to bring up a larger picture and more information about the guy. Jill's internet was crap, so the page loaded slowly, and his name came up first. It was Jeff. Jill and I waited for the picture to load, and as it slowly came into view, I literally stopped breathing for a second because it was him. That's how I learned his name, and that's how I learned that the man who was stalking me was actually a sexual predator. I didn't know what to do with this information, because thus far he hadn't done anything illegal per se. But I knew at this point that I needed to tell my parents. So I told them everything, and they were shocked to say the least. They honestly had no idea. Jeff was really good at hiding his activities, which makes me think that he wasn't just not very stealthy with me, that I didn't catch him so often because he sucked at being subtle or anything. No, Jeff wanted me to know that I was being watched, that I was the object of his obsession. So I told them everything. My dad was really angry. Like, I swear if he knew where Jeff was, he would have gone to threaten him to leave me alone or something. But my mum was just scared, like, really scared. She even cried a little bit. We briefly discussed calling the police, but again, Jeff hadn't actually broken the law other than maybe trespassing on our property, but I couldn't prove it was him or anything. All we could do was be vigilant. I thought I would feel better when they knew, but to be honest, I just felt worse. However, they needed to know, and everyone in my life needed to know for that fact, and so I told them. We started taking precautions, and by this point, I was in my 30s, but I felt like a child. I didn't have a curfew per se, but my parents were hesitant to leave me alone even during the day. My dad is normally not easily rattled, which is why it was so unnerving to see him so shaken up by this. We started keeping the cats inside too, and when the dogs were out, we wouldn't let them out of our sight. More than a few times, I remember sitting on the back steps after letting them out to keep an eye on them and just feeling like I was being watched. By this point, I never felt comfortable, never felt safe, so it might have just been my paranoia, but I don't know. My mum got me pepper spray though, and I would carry it with me at all times and when I was out of the house too. And at night, I even started taking a knife to bed. Jeff didn't stop though. I remember one time I was at a friend's apartment, and while she was in the bathroom, her front door started rattling like someone was trying to open it. Luckily it was locked, and before she even got out of the bathroom, it had stopped. I didn't tell her at first because, well, she wouldn't be spending the night there, so she wouldn't be alone. After that, I just stopped going to friends' houses. I stopped going anywhere if I could help it, especially alone. This whole thing just went on for years too. I was out of college and it was still happening too. For at least 5 years this went on, and when I moved into my first place on my own, I was really scared. But I'd been seeing him less and less, and I didn't want to live with my parents forever. But things went fine mostly, and there would be weeks and then months in between Jeff's sightings. And then one day I saw him at the store and I left right away, not wanting him to see me. I didn't think he did, and I made a few more stops before heading home, and that's when I realized that I shouldn't let myself get complacent about this situation. I always made sure my doors and windows were locked when I wasn't home, and even when I was sometimes, especially at night or if I just had a bad feeling or something. I'd been doing this since even before the Jeff situation began, so that was how I knew that there was just no fucking way that I left my door not only unlocked but slightly open. This just wasn't right, and I know I should have called the police, but I was feeling brazen. I think I was so tired of feeling like I just wasn't in control that I was trying to take the situation back into my own hands. So when I saw the door like it was, I readied my pepper spray and headed inside, and then went to the kitchen and grabbed the knife and went around my place and checked every closet, checked under every bed, checked everywhere someone could be hiding, but luckily no one was there. That was a truly terrifying experience, I must say. I just kept expecting him to pop out of some hiding place or something, but he never did. Jeff wasn't there. I still couldn't sleep there that night though, and I didn't want anyone to know, so I got a hotel room for that night. For a long time I never told anyone about this incident because this was a clear line that Jeff had crossed. I had no proof that it was him, but I knew that it was. I never called the police though because nothing was missing and there were no signs that anyone had broken in at all. But I knew that he had been there. I could just feel it. It scares me to wonder what could have happened if I'd been home when he got there too. Unless you've been through something like this, you can't know what it's like to go through this sort of experience. How it just wreaks havoc on your psyche. How it shatters your trust and your sense of safety. These are things you just don't really notice until they're ripped away from you. But there's this feeling of security that I've lost, and I don't think I'll ever get it back. It's been years since I've heard from Jeff, though I still live in the area. I have no idea if he's still watching me, and most of the time I think he's moved on or just been jailed or something. But every once in a while I'll be parking at a lot or home alone and just get that feeling, the one that I've come to associate with him. Maybe it's just paranoia, a gift that Jeff gave me that day he talked about me wearing a dress. I hope that's all it is, but sometimes I wonder. But the whole thing is just a part of my life now, and I try not to talk about it much, but everyone in my life knows about it. It's like the elephant in the room. I've changed a lot since then. I've got anxiety issues now, and I'm extremely private. I'm not sure if it's all because of this, but I know it's at least a factor. I'm still cautious, and I still don't like to go out alone after dark. I still lock my doors and windows whether or not it's nighttime, whether or not I'm home alone too, and I lock the bathroom door every time I shower. I check the locks at least 3 times before going to sleep. I still feel nervous if anything seems out of place at my apartment, or if I can't find something that should be in a particular place but isn't. I still carry pepper spray with me during the day, and I still take a knife to bed with me. All these years later. So I live by a freeway overpass. I can cross it and go to stores, and it's about 10 or 11:30 p.m. at night and foggy, and I wanted to grab some food. I decided to go somewhere where I needed to cross the overpass or walk almost a mile extra to get around. At the end of the overpass too is my city's largest cemetery. So I'm walking and I get to the halfway point of the bridge and I see a male form in all black with a black hood on. It looks like the person was wearing a hoodie or something, and I just had this oh shit feeling about this, but continued walking anyway. Out of nowhere though, I see this thing hop over the overpass. I screamed but hacked up phlegm instead, and my asshole puckered, and I seriously started to cry and ran to the spot. If If this thing jumped, it would have hit the grass median that divided the freeway. But when I got there, I saw nothing. Nothing at all. I stood there and looked and ran across the overpass and saw nothing on the other side too. No thud, no honking, no screeching of tires. I stood there sweating in 36-degree weather in a panic. And once I convinced myself that I had just hallucinated, I continued walking. I get my food and I head back, and I get to the end of the overpass to walk back and got hit with just complete dread. It was out of nowhere, and I'm trying to remain calm and listen to my footsteps on the pavement. And then I heard it. Shuffling of another person's feet. I swing around and see nothing. I was the only person on the overpass. I continue walking and can hear footsteps on the wet pavement. I would stop and I would hear additional footsteps too. Well, that's it. I decided to walk in a jogging pace at this point. I'm a good 250 feet from home and I'm moving, and I hear the footsteps behind me again. Honestly, I'm about to lose it, and I'm at the edge of the overpass before it hits my street. There's a large puddle at the corner, and I still can't see anything, but I can hear it all. I stomp into the puddle and run across the street, and then I heard a splash in the puddle and footsteps too. At this point, I'm near my house and I'm still turning around and constantly seeing nothing. I cross the road and still hear mine and another person's footsteps. I hit my driveway and yell, "You're not welcome here," and immediately the footsteps stopped. The worst part about all of this was me fumbling for my keys with my hands frozen and trying to unlock my door, thinking that I was about to get murdered or something. I have no clue what the fuck I encountered that night, but man, it was creepy. Okay, so my first story is actually my friend's story. During the time that these things took place, we were all high school students. This is all happening in Florida, by the way. I already knew about skinwalkers and the like, but when these things happened to me, I wasn't sure if it really was a skinwalker or something else. I've noticed that most of the people who tell me that they've experienced the same phenomenon live in the area that I do, and my friend is no exception. His name is Jay. Jay lives about 10 minutes away from me. She told me that in her bus that there's this one area they drive by to drop this kid off, and she said that she doesn't know why, but it just gives her the creeps. Well, she told me that one early morning, it was still dark outside, when they were driving in that area to pick him up, all the kids in the bus and the driver saw this weird-ass deer running along the bus. It didn't run away from the bus. Instead, it ran beside it. She said that it looked weird as hell. You know, all the usual shit about it, looking like some sort of humanoid deer because it just didn't look right. Like its limbs were bent in an awkward way, and she said its eyes were really freaky. Thing is that my friend didn't know jack shit about skinwalkers or any of that mumbo-jumbo, so I got pretty big chills from that. I tried being reasonable though, because, you know, maybe she just saw a regular deer and since it was dark she just got confused or something. Besides, it's Florida. I don't think we're supposed to get that type of stuff down here, right? However, Jay swore up and down that it wasn't like a normal deer. She said that they all saw it too, and the bus driver even slowed down to get a better look at it because everyone was weirded out by it and it was basically pandemonium. After a while, it ran off and disappeared. Jay couldn't have made this up too because, like I said before, she doesn't really know anything about skinwalkers or the goat man or whatever it could have been. So, anyway, I get freaked out because, well, here I am knowing about fucking skinwalkers and the goat man, and my friend is clueless thinking that she's just telling a regular story about some freaky-ass deer demon, so I asked her, "Do you know what skinwalkers are?" She just looked at me and said, "What's that?" I googled it and showed her those depictions of skinwalkers, and she goes, "Yeah, that's what I saw, except it had the head of a deer." She kept on saying it didn't look like an animal or a human, and that after a while the kid from that bus stop just didn't come back. Now, a couple of years before she told me this story, I found myself one night sitting in my backyard like really early, maybe 3 in the morning or so, because I was just thinking about personal things. I was just kind of chilling and enjoying the silence when all of a sudden I hear this really freaky ass echoing scream from really far away. The only way I can describe it is as if it was like a woman and a cat were trapped together inside of a bag and screaming like they were about to get murdered. I know mountain lions, foxes and owls are a thing, and they make some weird ass mating calls, but I've looked that shit up trying to debunk myself, and it just didn't sound anything like that. Like, usually you'd be able to tell if it's an animal, right? It's just common sense. Like my friend said before, that shit just didn't sound animal or human. It just sounded really fucking unnatural and weird. Now, me being me, I was pretty unfazed at first. A little concerned, yeah. Like, at first it was really far away, and I just thought it was a woman, and I actually thought that they might be killing people on the streets at 3 AM or something. The thing is, though, is that shit travelled fast. It was freaky as fuck, and the closer it got, the more weird and unnatural it sounded too. It only took me a couple of seconds to realise that shit ain't a woman, and it ain't a cat either, because while those things were going down, I was going through it in my head like, what the hell is that? This thing went from sounding like it was a couple of miles away to being in my fucking neighbourhood, and I swear, like, under 5 seconds. It was really fucking weird, because 1 second it sounded so far away, and then the next it sounded like it was in my street. To be honest, I almost shit myself, and the second I stood up to leave, the scream just stopped. Like, it just dead-ass stopped, and I'm really thinking at this point that it's in the front of my house or something. I walked as calmly as possible back inside and locked the doors, and the scream was back to being far away again. It was weird as hell that night. I've also heard scraping and tapping on my window some nights, usually around the same time. I'd say 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning time frame, and I've seen black figures that weren't affected by light outside of my house too. To add details to these things so that you can get a feel for it, basically what happened is that I was doing a project for class, and since I procrastinate like a pro, I'm up until 2 AM. I go to wash my hands from all the graphite, and as the water is running, I hear a scraping against one of the bathroom doors that leads to my backyard. Now, most of the door is made up of these glass panels that kind of make everything look like a bunch of blurry goops if you try to see out of it. And for a split second, I thought I noticed something pointy and ash grey scraping against the window. It almost looked ghost-like, I'd say, and I turned off the water and wait a little bit, and it comes back and scrapes against the window again. I'm trying not to freak out, but my hands are shaking at this point. It's stupid, but I actually whispered, "What are you doing?" while my voice trembled. It stopped, and I didn't hear anything except what sounded like someone walking by the window in my room every now and then. It continued that way for some nights too, off and on, and I would be hearing footsteps by my window and even a tap or two as well. Sometimes I just ignored them, and other times I looked out to see if someone was there, but there was never anyone. Another night, I'd been outside in my backyard again after having a rough day, and it was maybe 3 or so in the morning, and I'm sitting outside on the trampoline just relaxing. I suddenly noticed, though, that it's absolutely dead quiet. Like, that kind of uneasy silence that almost feels like a vacuum. I get this feeling of dread, like I'm being watched, and I snap my head to the left and catch a glimpse of a humanoid black figure ducking under the other side of my fence immediately. I'm a little freaked out because I noticed this thing was pure black. Like, the streetlight nearby didn't even hit it at all. It almost looked cartoony, if that makes any sense, because it's like the laws of physics just didn't even apply to this thing. Now, I would think that I would be crazy if It wasn't for a lot of kids in my school and around the area that I've told this to that have apparently all experienced the same shit. But one girl told me that she also heard tapping on her windows at night and even heard the screaming. It freaked me out because she explained it the same way that I did. She said it sounded like a woman or a cat, but not really like either. Another one of my friends who lives really close by told me that she saw dark figures in the woods and heard the screaming too. Pretty much everyone has heard this screaming, and it sounded the same. And that's the thing, it's in completely different time frames. And that's what's weird, because everyone's voice sounds different. So how could she describe the same thing that I did? So, after discussing it with a few friends, we all agreed from that point on that our town was just fucking haunted, but I don't know. I mean, if there's any animal that sounds like that, I want to know, because that shit just didn't sound like anything that I've heard before, so I'd like to be enlightened. The only person I've heard of who's seen anything remotely specific is my first friend from art who went on that bus, and apparently it's like really bad to talk about skinwalkers, and even worse if you see them. Apparently it's like bad mojo or something. I know from what I've read too that these things are said to be able to travel really quickly, so thinking about that made it seem like what we experienced was a skinwalker. But to be honest, I really hope that there's just a logical explanation that we aren't aware of. Also, today I asked my co-worker, who's also my friend in high school and lives nearby too, and he got all spooked and said that he's seen and heard the same things. He's very spiritual though, and often has visions and whatnot, and he told me that he believes that they're doing dark magic in the woods because of a dream that he had about some hooded group sacrificing a woman and a cat or something. Which is kind of freaky, because it also turns out that behind our local dog park there's a patch of woods with some really shifty shit in there. I was shown this by an acquaintance during my freshman year who lives a couple of streets away. Down the path in the woods, after some time of walking, there's this huge cross that's just smack dab in the middle of nowhere. It's basically raw, crooked-ass wood just nailed together into a cross with a rope hanging from where you would put your hands if you were getting crucified or something. It's huge too, and whenever I decide to check it out, I always feel uneasy. Like this feeling that if I stay for too long, something bad will happen. It doesn't look like a grave or anything, to be honest, but who knows? Anyway, he says that I'm not the first person that he knows who's told me about experiences like this, and he's also had his own experiences with this humanoid figure. He says that he saw one and it turned and looked at him directly in the eye as if it immediately knew what he was looking at. And so, basically, we just don't fuck with shit in the woods anymore. Okay, so for starters, I'm 22 and I moved into this very nice apartment about 4 months ago. During the first 3 months there was nothing even remotely strange happening that I can recall. Not a noise in the night or anything mysteriously falling or anything like that, which makes these encounters just even weirder for me for some reason. Also, I should add that I have never had any paranormal encounters or even slight interest in the paranormal until now. So, about 2 weeks ago is where everything started to get really bizarre, and that's really the only word that I can use to describe what's been happening to me. 2 weeks ago I was finishing up a movie, and I remember the time being 1 AM on the dot, and I turned out all the lights and went to the bathroom like I have every night since I moved in, and when I flicked on the light, I saw a man flash before my eyes, who had what looked like a top hat on, but it wasn't quite a top hat. I don't know what to call it, but he had some kind of black on his face, and the rest was white. Not pale, but completely white. His hands were too, and he had what looked like an old trench coat type of deal on. I don't remember anything else, really, and when I flicked on the light, he was there for about a quarter of a second, and he looked very, very malevolent, and it wasn't just the fact that I had just seen a scary man in my bathroom at 1 AM that got me. when I looked into his eyes, I really felt this evilness that I just can't really describe. Which is kind of why I guess I'm sharing this here in the first place, because I'm scared of it. I screamed at the top of my lungs, obviously, and I can honestly say that I've never done that before. I ran and flicked on my living room light and slept on the couch that night with the TV on. The next day, I tried to make myself believe that it was just a hallucination, but it was just so extremely vivid. It wasn't like a ghost or anything, it was straight up what looked like a physical body just standing in my bathroom. The day after the sighting, I was working on my computer too until I heard what sounded like one of my glass cups just breaking in the kitchen. It scared the shit out of me too because it was pretty loud, and I went to go and check it out, and I was pretty fearful to do so because I knew it might have something to do with what I saw the day before. I got into the kitchen and I saw a framed photo laying face down with glass pieces around it. This was one of my favorite things that I own too. One of my dear friends gave it to me a week before she left for Stockholm. It was just a picture of us in front of the Colosseum. We both love everything about Italy, and I know it's not much, but it was very special to me and holds a place in my heart. So when I saw it on the ground, I honestly wasn't even scared. I was just sad as fuck. The picture itself was ripped down the middle too, literally almost splitting the two of us in the picture. I was angry because I remember yelling "fuck you" because I know it must have done it because I put that picture up the day I moved in. Over the next week, nothing happened except for one night. I was sleeping and I woke up and I was terrified, honestly, because I haven't woke up in the middle of the night since I was pretty much a kid. I'm a great sleeper. So I looked around my room and nothing was there. But about 15 seconds after, I heard what sounded like something come from my living room and fade out into my kitchen. It was a really weird sound, but it was kind of like sprinting. I didn't say a word, and I laid in bed trying not to move the blankets to make a noise. I can honestly say that I was more scared than when I was in the bathroom. My heart must have been beating 160 beats a minute. I stayed up for the next hour and a half too until I just accidentally fell asleep. This was dumb of me, I know, because it could have been an actual robber or something, and I just stayed in bed, but I can't even tell you how terrified I was in that moment. Everything was intact in my apartment the next day too. The night after that, I slept on my couch and I woke up to a noise which I could not explain to you if you had a gun to my head. It sounded just absolutely nauseating. It sounded like it was coming from my bedroom, but I couldn't really tell. All my lights were on, so I was definitely less scared, but I sat up because I knew that I wouldn't be able to sleep after that. When I sat up, I noticed that there was a minuscule amount of blood on my pants. I pulled down my pants to see what it was from, and there were scratch marks that had 3 streaks. I was bleeding, not a lot, but it was definitely fresh. I was freaked out, obviously, because I definitely did not have those marks the day before. I went to the kitchen to clean myself up, not even looking in the bathroom's direction on my way there. And ever since then, every so often, I was hearing that same sound that I heard before. But however I describe the noise, it's not going to do it justice of just how truly unsettling it was. But it was almost like a little melody in a high-pitched raspy man's voice. I really can't afford to move right now, but this thing is obviously malicious. This is just really odd, so I don't expect straight-up help from any of you guys, but rather I just hope you can tell me what you would do in my situation. Update 1. So, thanks to everybody who's been offering me advice. It really makes me feel a lot better to have access to people with such knowledge of the paranormal. I've been listening to the audio from last night, and I didn't hear anything at all, and I'll update you guys if anything happens. Update 2. Hey guys, my coat rack just pretty much flew across the room. I'm getting kind of scared, as This seems to be progressing badly. Should I use some sage or something? I'm getting a bit desperate. I heard sage can sometimes make things worse, though. I'm also going to try and record audio tonight again. I'll update you guys. Update 3. So, the bathroom door just slammed hard, and I heard things hitting the wall, and when I worked up the courage to finally open the door, my medicine cabinet was wide open, and everything was just thrown into the bathtub. This is getting too real for me, and I just can't really handle this anymore. People are saying not to show it fear, but to be honest with you, I'm scared all day, every day, just waiting for the next thing to happen now. I might ask to stay at a friend's for a bit, but what's that going to do? Eventually I have to come back to my apartment. I need to get rid of whatever this is, pronto. Update 4. Hey, I was laying on my couch and I put my glass of water down next to me on the floor, and when I went to go and reach it to get it, it was just completely gone. And I still haven't found it. Like, I only took 3 sips of it and put it down. I mean, where could it have gone? I live in Kentucky. It's very backwards and rural here, and although I've lived here for a year now, I'm still not used to the extreme amount of woods and isolated areas. Coming from the beaches in Florida, things are very different here, and it's still taking me a while to adapt to my surroundings. I live in my parents' house in a rural area. Although it's next to a highway, it's not necessarily the most populated area, with 2 gas stations and a dollar store. That's it for about 20 minutes in all directions as well, which in my opinion means it's decently rural. Anyway, we live on an acre of land, and about 30 yards behind our house is a large 150-acre farm belonging to a farmer. Keep in mind too that we've never seen this guy before, but he does plant his plants during, well, plant season. For the year that we've lived up here too, there's been a lot of just weird stuff going on. But to name a few, there's been times where, well, for a lack of a better term, I've seen a ghost, I've heard random noises, and although aliens may not be considered paranormal, I swear to you that I've heard high-frequency noises and seen lights in the sky as well. But we do live around 30 miles from Fort Knox, so could be military stuff perhaps, I don't know. Now, this is where the road takes a deep turn though. I, as well as my family, have noticed that none of our surrounding neighbours, about 6 of them, is out past around 9 PM at night. Now, I can kind of understand that, but, I mean, there were always at least a few people up and about during the night where I came from. But there's not even a single late night party or anything here. Nothing at all. These people just do not come out at night. I thought it was odd at first, but I didn't pay it much notice until, well, recently. Me and a few friends would occasionally get together and go out at around 1 in the morning on the back porch and smoke and stargaze and just have a good time. Each time we would do that, the field, 100 feet away, would start rustling with noises, as if someone was running through the underbrush. Me and my friends, higher than kites, would normally just laugh it off, but that was until we heard a shrieking-like noise from that area. Needless to say, we haven't done that ever since, and that was about a month ago now. Ever since then, it's just really messed me up. I constantly worry that there's some type of wolf out there or something that lurks around at night, and I must admit that was my assumption too until 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago, I was outside at 11:18 on the spot. We have a compost bin, so after I cleaned the kitchen, I took the scraps of food and all the other stuff out there. It was pretty dark, but it was peaceful. I should mention now too that we have a steel fence around our acre of property, with the compost at the far back of the property next to the fence. The fence also has a gate on it that opens into the farm's field. I don't know why, but it's just there. And anyway, as I made my way to the compost, a huge sense of an unnerving feeling erupted just all around me. I just felt like I was being watched, or perhaps even stalked. It was dark as hell and I couldn't see anything. I only had enough visible light from our outside porch light to just see in front of me.
I dumped the scraps of the food into the compost, and then I heard the exact same rustling noise through the underbrush. I got ballsy here, and I had a feeling that there was some jackass teen or someone else trying to scare me, so I stood still for about 20 seconds in the direction of the noise. And here's where I start to panic. I took my phone out of my pocket, shook it twice to turn the flashlight on, and shined it in the direction of the noise, and nothing really to see but brushes and soybean plants. But something odd caught my eye. A reflection. I stood confused for a second and shined my light back over there where the reflection was. And holy hell, there was some maybe 4-foot-tall thing crouched in some soybean plants, and it was looking right at me with huge red eyes. To be quite honest too, I'm not sure how I acted. I know that I ran inside as fast as I could, and even though my asthma is horrible, that is the fastest that I've ever run. Needless to say, I came into the house, locked the door, and ran downstairs into the basement. My room has no windows, both a blessing and a curse, but there was no way in hell that that monstrosity was coming into my room. Eventually I passed out though, and woke up last night at about 7, missed dinner and everything else, but immediately went outside to the same spot. And nothing was there. I even walked into the field to see if maybe what I saw were just red berries or something, but there was nothing. After walking back to the house, the next door neighbor was out. I immediately called out to him, and as he came over, I asked him if he's ever seen anything abnormal around here, which his reply was, "Everyone I know, including myself, goes inside before nightfall. There's tales of hellcats and nightcrawlers just all around here." And with that, he just went to go put out his grill and went inside. I didn't sleep much last night. Mainly, I was just talking to my friends about everything, and since most of them live in Elizabethtown, about 25 minutes away, decent-sized city, they have no idea what the heck it was. Anyway, I'm pretty much lost for words at this point, and if you've listened to this so far, thank you very much for putting the time in to listen to me. I'm pretty freaked out right now, and I really don't know what to do. It could have been an animal, I'm sure, but that thing looked nothing like any animal that I've ever seen. I'm debating right now whether to go outside with a high-beam flashlight and scan the area from my porch, but to be honest, I may just crap myself this time if I see it again. Please, if anyone is from Kentucky, fill me in. Oh, and by the way too, I told my mum about this, and I could just tell by the look in her eyes that something was very wrong. After I explained it to her, she said that she was out on the porch one night talking to a friend when she heard someone climb over the metal fence and could hear footsteps gaining on her. She just noped the heck out of there and went inside in the span of a few seconds. It was really strange, and she couldn't see anything at all, and our fence is about 4.5, 5 foot tall. We also have a fenced-in porch as well, and I'm not too sure what's going on, but it definitely isn't normal. Oh, and I almost forgot about this too, but on the farmer's land, about 80 foot from the edge of our land, there's a sinkhole that's connected to a small cave. I haven't thought about that at all, but there's literally fallen down trees and stuff that sunk into the ground and just a cave opened up. And I'm wondering, what if that thing lives in there? I've also been suggested by some people to get trail cams and whatnot, and I'll do that when I can, but right now I'm just going to use a spotlight at night and night vision camera to catch something. I'll also be taking footage of the layout of my place, but I just don't know how to post it. Here's one thing too that some people have commented on. Dogs. The neighbours to the left of us have about 4 hound dogs. Ironically, they're pretty quiet during the day, and sometimes nights, but often they begin to bark and just kind of go crazy at some point. It's really strange, and I think this could be leading on to something, but maybe the dogs are sensing something. It's really odd because the same night that I had the encounter, the dogs were in fact barking. I forgot to mention that, but also there's something that's really freaking me out at this point. Ever since last night, there's been a really strange noise. I can only describe it as a bird singing, except it's kind of in a loop and it's really distant. Anyway, I heard the noise last night and it sounded like it was on the damn driveway. And today, when I heard it again, I followed the noise, but as I got closer, it seemed to just go further away, which was very strange and eerie indeed.
I've tried to think about what the noise could be from, but I've just never heard a noise like that in my entire life. I did some research by our county records today as well, and apparently the land owned by the farmer used to be government property in the 1960s and 80s. That's really strange to me, and it didn't exactly state why, and I know almost all property is government owned until you buy it, but back in the 1890s it was owned by farmers yet again and then bought out. All that was available there for the government control was not available, like it literally said unavailable. I'll figure out a way to post a picture because this is in the City Hall records. Also, there was a man-made crater built somewhere out there, and it used to be over 600 acres of controlled property, meaning the rest is all around. It even looks like our own house used to be on it too, and this definitely bats an eye. I'm starting to wonder if there was some sort of experiment or if there was a reason for it. I definitely still find this pretty strange, but I haven't heard anything today other than a strange occurrence outside. Or was it about 10 PM having a smoke when everything, and I mean everything outside, just became dead quiet. No bug noise, no crickets, no chirping, nothing. Just dead silent. I don't know what that means, but I finished up and I just went the hell inside. Something very weird just happened. I was home alone, or I thought I was anyway. Dad left for work early in the morning at around 4, and my mum left to go to the store just 2 hours ago. I was going out of my room to go and get a snack when I noticed that my dad was sitting on the couch from my point of view. That's what it looked like anyway. I could only see the top of his head. I was surprised because I didn't even hear him come back in, so I said, "Hey Dad, when did you get back home? I didn't even hear you open the door." And he said, "Oh, well, I only came back about 10 minutes ago." Something felt very off about that, but I didn't question it. So I just said, "Oh, okay," and continued walking to get my snack. Before I could get to our pantry, he asked me, "So what time is Mum getting home?" I said, I don't know, she called and said that she was checking out, so probably about another 30 minutes. Why?" Just wondering, kid." That was weird because my dad never calls me kid. And when he said that, his voice was a little deeper too. I got a bad feeling, so I turned around and walked towards the couch, only to notice that there was no one sitting on the couch. I looked around, really confused because, well, he was just there. I went to the window and realized that my dad's car isn't even in the driveway. It's been about an hour since this happened, and my mum's already home. This isn't the first time weird things have been happening around here, and I doubt that it's going to be the last. When I was around 15, I had started babysitting a family with 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. Their mum knew me, and the oldest was friends with my little brother, and had asked my mum if I could help out just because she had started taking on more shifts and her husband was doing the same. They lived right next to my high school and paid well, so I agreed, despite not really having that much experience. And pretty quickly, I realized that this was going to be difficult. The kids were great, but I was nervous around them. But the oldest was fine, just played on his Xbox most of the time while doing homework. But the 2 youngest, man, they were a completely different story. The middle child, daughter, was completely obsessed with horror movies, and on more than one occasion, I had to hide the knives from her since she wanted to reenact them, and the youngest son even tried to set fire to the Christmas tree. I know what kids can be like since I have a lot of younger and older cousins, but these ones, they just drove me insane, and I would constantly worry about them hurting themselves or even each other. If they played up, I would threaten to call their mum, which normally would work. It was after a few months, though, that I realized if I'd mentioned the dad, that's when they would really just behave and do what I had asked, so that's what I started doing. Now, I never really met the dad. I just knew the guy was really tall and big build, but was always described to me as still being really nice.